Hey everyone, and welcome right into today's explainer. So today we're unpacking something that literally happens to every single one of us every single day. Yet, it might be hiding a massive secret about your cardiovascular health. We're talking about your morning routine. But not just any routine. We're talking about the chronobiological morning. We're going to explore how a chaotic, rushed morning might actually be a hidden danger to your heart. And more importantly, we're going to look at how a completely realistic, science-backed approach can lower your blood pressure naturally. All right, let's dive right in.
Now, you might be wondering, why on earth is your heart most vulnerable right around 6 a.m.? Well, looking at the data, it turns out that strokes, heart attacks, and sudden cardiac events frequently cluster in those early morning hours. And the reason for this is that the transition from being asleep to waking up, it isn't just a simple flip of a switch. It's actually a major physiological stressor. Your body is rapidly shifting systems, and for a lot of people, that transition window is incredibly dangerous.
And that brings us to what's known as the morning surge. Basically, this is the rapid early morning increase in your blood pressure triggered literally just by the act of waking up. Now, a slight rise in blood pressure, that's a perfectly normal biological process. I mean, it helps you actually get out of bed. But in some individuals, especially if you've got underlying hypertension or stiff arteries, this natural process can overshoot and become pretty excessive. This surge creates a window of cardiovascular vulnerability that your standard, afternoon doctor's appointment might completely miss. Okay, so here's our roadmap for today. We're going to cover the morning danger zone, the science of waking up, how to hydrate and breathe, the wall squat secret, fueling your morning, and finally, tracking for success.
Starting off with Section 1, the morning danger zone. So it turns out there's just an absolute massive amount of chemical activity happening in your body before your feet even hit the floor. And these are the invisible internal forces spiking your blood pressure the second you wake up. Your body experiences this cortisol awakening response. Your cortisol levels surge, usually peaking around 30 to 45 minutes after you wake up. At the exact same time, your sympathetic nervous system, that's your fight or flight mode, totally takes over. Adrenaline and noradrenaline are released, which immediately bumps up your heart rate. And on top of all that, a really complex biological cascade actually activates your kidneys to immediately tighten your blood vessels. It's this massive coordinated sequence of events designed to wake you up, but man, it dramatically increases the workload on your heart. Moving right along to Section 2, the science of waking up. So the big question is, how do we strategically hijack this timeline from minute zero? And how do we do it in a totally realistic way without needing to become a Zen monk? Well, we're going to counter that massive chemical spike with a realistic chronobiological routine. Step 1 is hydration, to expand your plasma volume. Step 2 involves light and breathing to regulate your autonomic tone and just calm down that sympathetic nervous system. And Step 3 is gentle movement to enhance circulation. Notice I said gentle. This isn't about cramming a 2-hour intense workout into your morning. It's about targeted, highly effective biological interventions. Let's break down that first step in Section 3, hydrate and breathe. It turns out that drinking a glass of warm water first thing in the morning isn't just a good habit. It's a literal medical necessity. Overnight, you lose a lot of fluid just through breathing and sweating. This waking dehydration leads to a drop in plasma volume, which basically makes your blood thicker. It's a state called hemoconcentration. Your body also releases vasopressin, a hormone that constricts your blood vessels. So think about it. Your heart is forced to pump much, much harder just to push that thicker blood through tighter pipes. Drinking 300 to 500 milliliters of warm water the moment you wake up instantly expands your plasma volume and shuts down that vasopressin release. It's a real game changer. And while you're drinking that water, you should try practicing this, the 4-4-6 breathing method. It goes like this. Inhale deeply through your nose for 4 seconds, hold that breath for 4 seconds, and then exhale slowly through your mouth for 6 seconds. Doing this for just 5 to 10 minutes actually activates your parasympathetic nervous system. That's the rest and digest mode. It actively lowers cortisol and stimulates the production of nitric oxide, which physically widens our blood vessels. It is a profound, incredibly immediate way to blunt that morning surge. All right, let's jump to Section 4, the wall squat secret. Guys, this literally blew my mind. When looking at a massive 2023 meta-analysis from the British Journal of Sports Medicine, which looked at nearly 16,000 people, we see that isometric exercises, specifically wall squats, absolutely crush the competition. We've always heard that aerobic cardio, like walking or jogging, is the absolute best thing for blood pressure, right? But check this out. Isometric holds dropped systolic blood pressure by an incredible 8.24 millimeters of mercury. That is nearly double the effectiveness of traditional cardio, and it's actually comparable to some prescription blood pressure medications. No way, right?
I mean, an 8.24 drop is massive. So why does just sitting still against a wall work so well? It's all thanks to a mechanism called reactive hyperemia. When you're holding a static wall squat, your large leg muscles contract and squeeze your blood vessels, which temporarily restricts blood flow. But the real magic happens when you stand up and rest. That restriction releases, creating this massive, healing rush of blood and a huge release of nitric oxide that helps permanently relax your arteries over time.
So what's the actual realistic protocol here? It's super simple. You hold the wall squat for 2 minutes. Then you rest for 2 minutes. Repeat that whole thing 4 times. And the best part, you only need to do this 3 days a week. The whole shebang takes less than 15 minutes, you don't need a gym, zero equipment, and you literally don't even have to leave your bedroom. It is the ultimate high-return morning habit.
Which brings us to section 5, fueling your morning. Now that we're hydrated, we're breathing, and we've moved a bit, let's head into the kitchen. Because there is a stark contrast between a typical chaotic morning and a truly heart-healthy one. The classic rush hour routine, that's grabbing highly processed, high-sodium foods and chugging coffee immediately. Doing that just pours gasoline on your body's stress fire. Compare that to a realistic, protective, DASH-aligned routine. DASH stands for Dietary Approaches to Stop Hypertension. This alternative focuses on whole grains like oats, foods high in potassium and magnesium, which actively counteract sodium, and perhaps most crucially, delaying your caffeine. And that brings us to the absolutely crucial caffeine rule. You must wait 30 to 60 minutes after waking before you drink that coffee. Why? Well, remember that natural cortisol spike we talked about earlier? If you drink coffee at minute 0, you are basically layering artificial stress directly on top of your natural biological stress peak. Caffeine blocks adenosine, which is a chemical that normally helps your blood vessels dilate, and it triggers your adrenal glands to release even more adrenaline. For a lot of people, that immediate cup of coffee can artificially spike their blood pressure by another 8 points, right when their heart is already working its absolute hardest. Just delay the brew a bit and let your body wake itself up first.
Finally, section 6, tracking for success.
Okay, so we've built this incredible, very realistic routine, but how do we actually know it's working with absolute precision? Because if you measure your blood pressure wrong, you're honestly just measuring the stress of walking around your house. Here is the exact clinical timeline you need for an accurate morning reading. Minute 0, you wake up and empty your bladder. Minute 5, you sit calmly, feet flat on the floor, back supported, arm resting right at heart level. Minute 10, after 5 solid minutes of resting, you take the measurement. And you absolutely must do this before you drink coffee, take medications, or do those wall squats. Measuring consistently at this exact biological moment gives you the true baseline of your morning's surge.
Now, the final piece of this puzzle actually happens the night before. And honestly, this surprised me. We're always told to get 8 hours of sleep, right? But the American Heart Association recently released a statement proving that sleep regularity matters more than total hours. People with consistent sleep-wake times, meaning going to bed and waking up at the exact same time every day, yes, even on weekends, they had up to a 57% lower risk of cardiovascular death. If you suffer from social jet lag, where you sleep way in on Sundays, you completely disrupt your body's natural blood pressure rhythms for the week. Which really leads us perfectly to the core philosophy of this entire explainer. Consistency beats intensity. You really don't need a frantic 2-hour morning workout or a flawless, impossible diet to protect your heart. A gentle, structured, totally realistic daily alignment of your habits, like drinking warm water, doing a few minutes of breathing, delaying that coffee, doing a few wall squats, and waking up at the same time, is far more powerful and protective than chaotic bursts of intense effort. So I'm going to leave you with this question. Which habit will you start tomorrow morning? You absolutely don't have to do them all at once. Just pick one of these chronobiological tools to protect your heart when you open your eyes tomorrow. Will it be the warm water, maybe the 4-4-6 breathing, or perhaps those 15-minute wall squats? The choice is entirely yours, but the benefits are undeniable. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and hey, here's to mastering your morning biology.